business valuation, customer concentration is usually not a good thing. Whether we're talking about one customer, your top 3 customers, a certain customer type, or even a certain type of industry, having a concentration can make a company less valuable. And while this may or may not apply to your CFO practice, actively designing your customer mix can pay big dividends. Hi, I'm Jennifer Peak, founder of the CFO School, and we help CPAs become high-performing CFOs. By the end of this training, you will have learned the 3 critical steps in designing your customer mix as a CFO with intent and purpose. And be sure to stay till the very end when I tell you the biggest mistake I see when CFOs design their customer mix. Before we dive into the meat of this training, I just want to take a moment and tell you how this training has been organized. The whole intent is to help you design your customer mix for your CFO practice with purpose and intention. I have put these steps in a very specific order. If we were just looking at filling your CFO practice, we would approach it a completely different way. But because we really want to design this in a way that is something that supports you, not just in getting clients on your roster right now, but also in an intentional design way, we've created these steps to support that process. So with that, let's dive in to step number 1. Look at your client options, the types of customers that are available to you. Now, even in this largely virtual business world, there are going to be some limitations on the types of customers that you're going to work with. And I'm not really talking about your preferences. We're going to get to that more a little bit later. I'm more talking about the limitations of things like geography, industry, access, and availability. So when I talk about geography, what I'm really referring to is where your clients are located and where you're located. Now, like we said, a lot of businesses are done fairly virtually these days. And depending upon the type of customer that we're talking about, that can be completely acceptable. Service-based businesses are a good example of that, particularly professional services who are often serving clients in a variety of locations who don't need to be on site with those clients, just as you wouldn't need to be on site with your client. On the other hand, we might be looking at companies that geography plays a key role in. Now, oftentimes this can be industry specific as well as geography specific, and a really good example of this is the oil and gas industry. So oil and gas companies are often located or have facilities that are very near oil and gas fields. You might want to be or need to be close to those organizations. It provides a context for you to be able to do your best work and give your best service to those clients. As an example, elements of being in that same geography can include the context for what's going on with your customers. Things like economic shifts in the region, activities with competitors, inside knowledge about what's going on with the labor, requirements from local governments. All of those things are critical to you being able to provide not just CFO skills to a client, but really the business insights that are important for the decisions that they're going to need to be making and the decisions that you're going to need to help with. The second thing that you'll want to consider is industry. That may be tied to geography, but it doesn't have to be. There are construction companies everywhere in the United States and probably throughout the globe. But specific to the United States, you don't have to be in a certain area or region or even state to work with construction clients. However, there are industry nuances and specifics that are important when you think about working with construction industry clients. And those requirements may be ones that you're not interested in learning about or having to implement or execute or maintain. The other thing that you'll want to consider when you're looking at industries is whether they have other types of requirements that you like or you dislike. For example, you may not want to work with retail companies because they tend to have inventory, they tend to have all kinds of labor turnover, particularly if they're more a brick and mortar type of environment. They may have a whole host of sales tax considerations. They are likely to have elements of leases and space considerations and cash flow things that they are going to want to consider. All of those are unique to companies that operate within a retail industry or a retail environment. Other industries that you may want to look at are any ones that have a high degree of inventory. We touched on this a little bit with our retail, but there are lots of industries that have a high degree of inventory, and inventory accounting and maintenance and decisions and projections are a beast unto themselves. So having a background or an expertise or even just a desire to really gain that knowledge would be important if you're looking at industries with those types of requirements. How much information and interaction are you going to have with clients that operate in certain types of industries? Now, some of this is going to go back to our geography equation, that your physical proximity could be more important with some industries than it is with others, just like it is more important with certain geographic considerations than with others. The third thing I want to talk about is access. Access comes down to a lot of different things, but in this particular case, what I'm talking about is your opportunity to get access to these companies. In some cases, you're going to want to do this through networking or through corporate events or associations or referral partners or all of those types of things on the list. If you are unable to at least meet some of those access requirements and would have to rely almost 100% on some form of cold outreach or cold calling, you may want to think twice about having those clients on an ideal client list, particularly if you're newer in your business. You can identify them as longer term potentials, and in the meantime, start creating some of those relationships and potential connections that will put your foot in the door with those other clients. The fourth and final element, your client's ability to hire you. Are they available to be a fractional CFO client? My first example is that you may have already created your offer, but whether you've created your offer or not, you have certain financial needs and requirements inside of your business, and you may have identified that you want to work with brick and mortar retail shops in your local region. Most of them may make less than $2 million. That is a great identification in terms of the types of customers that you want to work with, and they may check all of those boxes that we talked about before. However, if it's one location, it's a brick and mortar store, and it's making less than $1 to $2 million a year in top line revenue, the odds are pretty low that they're going to need a fractional CFO. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't need certain types of your services, but if you've decided that you really want to work with a handful of clients on an ongoing basis, then they may not be a great fit for you. They just don't have the availability or the financial resources or necessity for that type of skill set. Now, at the other end of the spectrum are really large companies, or at least larger companies. And the larger companies may have decided to hire their finance function on an internal basis. They may be meeting their CFO requirements through a full-time employee. Somewhere in this landscape are clients that are highly available to you, ones that really need your skill set, that will fit with your perfect offer, and are ideal in all of the other ways that we've defined. The second part of creating your ideal customer mix with purpose and intention is to get really clear on your skills and strengths. And those are not the same thing. So what you're going to want to look at is each one of those individually and then how they come together. In terms of skills, what we're talking about here are things that are related to your education, your experience, your developed expertise. It could also be your credentials, your certifications, any of those types of things that are externally validated, for lack of a better way to put it. There are going to be potential clients that are going to use those external facts to validate whether or not you're a good fit for them. You are going to run into companies that are going to want you to be a certified CPA. It doesn't matter whether or not you actually need CPA skills to be able to do the job that they're hiring you for. That is one of their requirements, and it's something that you need to be aware of. You may also find companies that are going to want to have other types of certification or experience, and that's something that you'll want to be able to demonstrate that you bring to the table. Beyond those documented skills, we'll also want to consider your strengths. Your strengths are those things that you do really well. You may not think of them as strengths, but honestly, the way I like to approach this is to consider the stuff that is second nature to you. You may have a strength at doing business calculations or business models. Your strength may be that you're highly analytical and you can see relationships in data before anybody else can even dream of coming up with those types of connections. All of those things are important. And considering your strengths in combination with your skills is going to be really critical to figuring out what types of clients you work best with. This is really starting to get into designing an offer and evaluating clients from your personal perspective. Let's take data analysis as one of your key strengths. Then you're going to want to look for clients that are very data intensive, that really derive a lot of benefit and value out of the fact that that's a key strength of yours. You're really not going to want to be working with clients that don't have a lot of data or the need for a lot of analytics related to the financial and operational information that's coming into their company or that is related to the performance of their company. I can assure you that every fractional CFO has its own unique set of skills and strengths and combination, and they also have their own preferences about the types of clients that they work with and the types of engagements that they take on. So when you're combining your strengths and your skills, you can really use that to your advantage, and you can use it to the advantage of your clients. It's going to help you communicate with potential clients better. It's going to help you design your offers in a way that provide the highest value to those clients and to your own CFO firm. I think you can see how important it is to doing this at the beginning of your process instead of getting into a situation where you have a number of clients that may be lovely but are not the best fit for you. The third part of creating an ideal customer mix that you're designing with purpose and intention is creating your offer. Creating an offer is really not your biggest problem. In fact, you may have a list of different offers. The challenge is designing an offer that really speaks to those clients that we've identified in step 1 and marrying them with the skills and strengths that we talked about in step 2. There is certainly an element of art to doing this. What is the most value added service, and offer that you'll have for the clients that you want in your ideal customer mix. If your ideal customer mix really consists of 4 or 5 larger companies that you're working with on a longer term basis, then you're going to want to design an offer that speaks to that customer mix. These are going to be offers that are probably going to be long-term retainer engagement. On the other hand, if you've identified a whole list of customers that you want to work with on a short-term basis, then you're going to want to design an offer that reflects that. What types of short-term projects might these companies want to hire you for? In fact, you may find that there are a lot of companies that are only going to hire outsourced CFOs or fractional CFOs on a project level basis. So if that's the case, then you're going to want to have an offer that meets those requirements. You're using your offers as a way to facilitate the execution of the work that you did in step 1 and step 2. This is where all of it comes together and really helps you implement working with the clients that you most desire to be working with. This is also a customer mix that is sustainable. There's a lot of value in honing in on that ideal customer mix. If we were just seeking to fill your roster with clients, we would not take this approach. In fact, we would look at your offer creation first, and then we would go find clients that would take you up on that offer. That doesn't necessarily create an ideal customer mix. And if that's the path that you want to take, there's certainly nothing wrong with that at all. But I will caution you that if you focus on only filling your practice as fast as you possibly can, you're gonna end up with clients that you do not work well with. In all honesty, it can be hard to unwind some of those engagements and relationships when you find that this just isn't the best fit. So to the extent that you can take a moment and really be more intentional with how you're getting your clients, seeking your clients, identifying potential ones, it will pay you huge dividends in the long run. Before I get to the biggest mistake that I see fractional CFOs making in designing their customer mix, I'd love for you to take a moment to like this video and also post a comment about what your biggest takeaway from this training has been so far. Besides the insights that we'll get from you, we also want to know if we're hitting the mark on our trainings. The biggest mistake that we see fractional CFOs make is letting their customer mix happen by default. I can tell you from experience that there's a lot of CFO practices that end up with an accidental specialty. And I can assure you that I am one of those CFOs that ended up in just that situation. It played to my strengths. It was in an industry that I had a lot of experience and interest in. I was willing to continue to invest my time in learning more about that industry. It worked out really well for me in a lot of different ways. That's not always true of everyone. So you'll just want to be sure that you're not letting those things happen by default. The other thing that can happen, you're letting somebody outside of your business define who your customers are going to be. And even if your networking connections and your referral partners have the best intentions, it's still something that you can't completely control. That is another way that we see CFO practices having a customer mix by default. Having something that is not diligently planned and designed for you doesn't provide the same benefits and long-term results than if you followed a plan to design your customer mix with purpose and intention. If you found this training useful, then I think you'll also find our short training on the 3 services that every fractional CFO must offer very helpful. In particular, I think you'll enjoy it if you are really refining your offer from step 3 of the training that we just covered. Be sure to grab that as soon as you get done watching this video. You can find it here on this same channel.